Hey everybody tuning in online, thank you for watching today. We got a couple people here in the office, so I just want to remind you guys we're using the Logitech mics in the ceiling, so if you say anything they will be able to hear you on stream, or if you're messing with anything they'll probably be able to hear that as well. So just want to make sure everyone knows that. Today we're going to be talking about push notifications, and before I get started, my name is Emmett Dean. I'm an engineering manager over the Flutter team here at Black Airplane. I have a background of native Android and iOS development, and I've been using Flutter for about 3 years now. I've published over 12 different Flutter apps, and we have several more in progress, and I love Flutter so much that I'm using it for my own startup as well. I wanted to say thank you to Black Airplane. We have both food, pizza over there, and beer in the fridge. Black Airplane is a leading development agency in the Southeast, and we have kind of a special team here that can produce top quality work and is capable of building pretty much anything these days. Today, like I said, we're going to be talking about push notifications. So just to go over this really quickly, why does your app need push notifications? Number one, you need to keep your users engaged. You also need to keep your users informed of anything that's happening and kind of in real time, and also to trigger your users to take action in your application. When I very first started building mobile apps, I hooked up push notifications with Firebase, not unlike we're going to do today. And I used to just sit there on the live view of how many users were using my app, and I would send out a push notification, and all of a sudden 20 or 30 people would open up my app at the same time. So it's a great tool to keep people engaged in your app and bring them in. So we have three main different types of notifications. We have personalized, which are going to be specific to an individual. You have topic-based, which are going to be specific groups of people that use your application, and then also app-based, so you can just send a notification everybody app-wide. Push notification limitations. These are not persisted anywhere. This means that you need to keep a record of all the notifications that are sent in your database in case you want to show a notification screen in your application, which is pretty common. So if you want to actually save these notifications that are sent out, you have to do it in addition to the push notification system. There's also some it's difficult to test because specifically on iOS simulators do not support push notifications. So for that reason, I'll be demoing on an Android simulator today. iOS also does require some extra setup, and because you have to test it on physical devices, it gets a little bit complicated. So how are we going to implement them today? Firebase, which is another Google product. Flutter is a Google product. We figured we'd keep it all under the same umbrella. We typically use Firebase at Black Airplane for our push notifications, just because of its ease of setup and also the cross-platform support, which is perfect for Flutter. Right now, the Firebase notification system will support Android, iOS, and also web. So as you're building with Flutter, it just makes sense handle this once through Firebase. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over. If you look up the Flutter Firebase messaging packaging, you'll see that they have some excellent documentation. So I'll kind of walk you through our code base today, but just know anything more complicated that you're going to need to tackle, they have fantastic documentation here showing you pretty much anything that you need to do and kind of any different options that you would need. It does support options specifically for iOS and Android, since they, for instance, handle badge counts differently. So they give you support of being able to handle all of those straight from Firebase. So first off, we had to go ahead and create a Firebase project. I'm using the same one that I used for the Flutter Developers Atlanta website, but I went ahead and added this Android app. I've built out a very light database here that's going to have a notifications table, which is going to keep a record of all the notifications like I described. And then also a users table, which we're just going to use to store the FCM token, which stands for Firebase Cloud Messaging Token, which is going to be this universal token that we can store, and that's how we determine we're going to send messages right away. Firebase in their console does have a way for you to send notifications without having to write any code. So you can look at that by heading over to, I believe it is this messaging tab. And here you can run a new campaign and run a notification. And this is going to give you a nice visual on, we want to run a notification and who we're going to send it to. So it gives you an opportunity to send a test message, but as you go through this, you can also select different target segments you might have set up. So we would select our application, and it'll tell you how many users you can send it to, schedule it, everything like that. So they have pretty powerful tools for sending messages, just one-off or even recurring messages to a broad audience. But when you need to send a push notification to individual users based on actions, that is when you're going to need some of the code that we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and dive into our code base. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to go into your pubspec YAML, which is kind of our dependency manager in Flutter, and we're going to add Firebase core, Firebase messaging, and then also because of our database is also going to be going through Firebase today, we're also using Cloud Firestore. We use the new Flutterfire CLI to set up everything, which is going to generate this default options file for us. So just with one command line argument, you're going to have all of the API keys and everything automatically generated for you. This is something new that just came out with the new Firebase Flutter collaboration with Flutter 3. So this tool is fantastic for setting up Firebase projects that use Flutter. So digging into the data section of our application, we have two models that you saw in the database. We have both a notification, which is just going to have a title and a body and an ID, and then also a user, which is going to have an ID or FCM token. I'm not doing any sort of authentication here, so just when the app starts up, we go ahead and store that FCM token just for our use. Accessing these, we have basic Firestore services that just kind of allow us to do simple operations like streaming, reading, and everything like that. This is a pretty standard thing that we have built out. This is code that we reuse for a lot of our projects. This project is available on GitHub, on my GitHub, so I'll link that in the YouTube channel after this video, so you can check it out if you want to reference it. But these services just allow us to access everything in the database. Heading into the controller for our one main view, all you need to do to actually, on the app side, is to store the token and listen for notifications. Without listening for notifications, they'll still pop up in the background, but by default, push notifications will only show up if the app is minimized. So by setting up this listener here, we can throw a snack bar or perform an action whenever a notification comes in while the user actually has the app open. But beyond that, all you need to do is call this one line to request permissions, and then here we get the Firebase token, the FCM token, and store it in a user object in our database. So if you're just an app developer wherever you work, this is pretty much all you have to do. You get the token, you store it, and then you leave it up to your back-end developers to determine when we want to send notifications to the application. But a lot of you probably are trying to build this yourself, so we're going to dig into the back-end side as well. So for this example, we're using Node.js. Again, we're going to deploy this on a Firebase Cloud function. So we'll basically get a Cloud function that's called send notifications. And we've set up a trigger here to whenever a new notification document in our database is created, we'll go ahead and send a notification to all of the users in our application. Again, this is super basic, but we just wanted to do this to demonstrate. So if we, let me go ahead and minimize this. Here's my Android simulator running the application. I also listed out all of the notifications here like you would in a notifications tab or notifications page in your application. This does update real time, but we are going to go ahead and demo this by heading over to our Firestore database, and we're going to add a new notification document. Typically, you might provide your end user some sort of console to send out these custom notifications or set up notifications. But again, for this example, we're just going to do a quick demo. So title, we're going to say new notification, and it will also take a body that says hello world. And since the app is open and push notification won't actually show up, instead it's going to show a snack bar because push notifications won't show up in the foreground on Android. So as we add this, it'll take a second, you'll see it gets added into this list, and then that new pop-up will show whenever the notification comes in the background. If we were to do the same thing with the application minimized, you'll see the push notification. So we'll go ahead and do the ID, title, test again. And then add one more, body, hello world, ×2. When we hit save here, it will take a second, and then the phone will ding. You'll see this flutter icon. This is the icon of our application. When we look at this, you'll see the push notification appears right here like you would expect. So, as you can see, setting up basic push notification services with Firebase is actually quite simple. Where it gets complicated is if you need to send a lot of notifications to a lot of people at the same time, where you will leverage the topics and a more of a pub sub model, or if you need to be able to show notifications like we displayed, it adds complexity to the back end and storing all of the information that you need to store. But Firebase and Flutter make this super easy for us to do. So that pretty much wraps up our push notification demo. Do you guys have any questions? Yep.
I have a question. It may not be directly to push notifications, but in the beginning of it, you said the CLI allows you to generate like the app ID and stuff like that. Does that replace like the info.plist file and stuff like that?
Yep. So you will no longer have to set that up,
Wow.
which is fantastic. You run this command called flutterfire configure, and it will ask you which platforms you want to support, and you choose the Firebase project, and it does the rest for you.
That's really good. I like that. Cool.
Huge time saver.
Yeah.
And it also makes sure you do everything right. When you're setting it up for a lot of platforms, if you've done it a couple times, you'll probably forget, put this here, put this there, and then all of a sudden you're like, it's telling you can't find Firebase or can't authenticate with your Firebase project. So this saves that whole headache.
Nice. We'll check that out.
Now, you were saying the cloud functions were just some Node.js.
Yep, I can show you.
Are there any alternative options, or is that kind of the...
Yeah, so they have a Node library, they also have a PHP library, and I think they support most popular backend languages. So with this is just the sending side. So as long as you send the token somewhere that your backend developer can access it, then all they have to do is install their version of this package to actually send the notifications out. Firebase, using everything seamlessly, it adds some extra convenient features like this listening into the database when a notification object's created, or you can do a normal HTTPS function if you want with this, but there's just some added benefits of doing it all under the Firebase kind of environment. Anybody tuning online, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. Otherwise, anybody else have anything else?
One more question. So with the notification that you're sending, you add a title and body. Is there a way to add like additional information?
Yeah, so there's different types of notifications. So there's also data. So this is TypeScript. I'm not a pro at TypeScript, but they have a whole bunch of different fields that you can set, and they have Android and iOS fields as well. Here, let me just reference the documents. So for iOS, for example, they support a badge count. So this adds some more complexity because you need to know when to clear the badge and when to update the badge. So this means you need to be able to track when people actually read the notifications. So a lot of times we'll have a last read, or you need to go in and clear out the database when they actually click on a notification, marking it as read. And then whenever a new notification is sent, it calculates the badge count or unread messages for that user and sends that. So these send notification methods can get fairly complex depending on what all functionality you're after. Now, a lot of notifications don't need badge count, but if you're building some sort of texting app or messaging app where you need to know how many unreads you have, that's when that becomes important.
Gotcha.
Awesome. Well, if nobody else has any questions, I think that we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Awesome. Thank you, everybody on the line. Just to wrap this up, I just want to announce next time with Trey Hope, we're talking about authentication. Is there anything you want me to add to the people watching online for this?
Just tune in, and we'll be talking about authentication in multiple ways. Google sign in, Apple sign in, phone number, email password, any way that you can think of authenticating your users.
Awesome. Are you doing that with Firebase as well?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Another Firebase stuff. We're just the Flutter Firebase meetup now. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next month.